Betsy Smith, and I am the branch chief of our Customer and Technical Support Center. We are the group that processes all the permits and I shouldn't say processes the permits. We process the permit applications, and on the site side, we process all the plan submittals through to the other agencies for their reviews. Today with me is Nicole McMahon, and she is the PAC, one of two actually branch chiefs or managers. She oversees all of the technicians who process your plans on a daily basis. She's Superwoman. She does about a zillion different things, including keeps up with a lot of our FIDO and ProjectDox challenges on a daily basis. I have Steve Kendrick, who is Nicole's boss, and he is our guru that is all PAC. He is also oversees our Super Tech program, which actually works with a lot of the decks and finished basements and some of the simpler additions. And he is also our leader into Plus, which is the long-term technology system that Fairfax County is moving toward that will hopefully give us a better platform for all of the IT we're trying to accomplish right now with ProjectDox and FIDO. And then I have Kyle Kratzer, who is managing our residential fast track program, and his group of reviewers review a lot of the residential additions that you all provide or permit on a regular basis. And he's going to talk a little bit about that program and maybe some of the inspection side. He's with our building division. So today, what we tried to do was organize it into, Nicole will be presenting a little bit about how it looks right now, why we have the two plan permit processing system. We can thank COVID. And then some of the other pointed questions that your group presented, Nicole will try and answer through her presentation, which will talk a little bit about what's available on the web, how you can use ProjectDox as your favorite friend, and some of the other details. And then we'll talk a little bit about some of your concerns with the protected signatures and how contractor IDs are working. And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges we're facing with one-on-one communication and some of the reasons behind that, and how we're looking short-term, long-term, longest term. Finally, Steve will circle back, a term my husband says I use way too much, to where we're moving and what you can anticipate in the near future, like November. And then he might jump, if there's time, a little bit to what Plus might look like in the more long-term, like 2022, 2023. And then we'll wrap it up with some questions and answers. It's all you, Nicole.
All right. Hello, everyone. Before I get started too much, I want to make sure my screen says I'm sharing, but I still see all of you all. Want to confirm you guys all see ePlan permitting process? Got some nods going. Fantastic. All right. So let's jump on in. So a couple things I want to go over quickly, just as a kind of an overview. I think some of our challenges have been confusion with the fact that we are still dealing with a situation of dealing with an older software, which some of you guys I'm sure are aware of, FIDO. And integrating it into a newer software, which I know some of you guys have experiences with us and with other jurisdictions, which is ProjectDox. One additional layer is that we had a cutoff date that we had to identify the previous permits that were in rotation, that were in the paper world, and then kind of this new switch that we did because of COVID. So a big date to keep in mind for us is March 25th, 2020. That is the date we announced that we were fully electronic and all new submissions had to go through what we call ePlans, which is the ProjectDox software, versus what we termed as our ePaper program, which you may have heard referred to as the document upload portal or the Nintex form, share file, thing of 1,000 names. But that is a big date to keep in mind, again, prior to March 25th versus after. It's also important to note that anything that was e-paper, so started before March 25th, continues through e-paper for the life of the project through final inspection. So any revisions to a previously paper plan still follows the e-paper process, okay? Good place to start for us right now for a lot of this information is going to be accessing our interims counter webpage. What I have screenshotted here for you guys is our FIDO page. It tends to be the most common page. Most people are very familiar with it, how to access it, right? fairfaxcounty.gov/FIDO. You can get to this page. At the top of it, there's that red bar. That links you to our interims counter page now, where we have a breakdown of the e-paper process and the e-plan process. It goes into explaining some of the new steps with the alternate e-plan processes I'm sure some of you guys have become familiar with, which is the way we had to allow for fully electronic submission because of COVID. So just a good page to be at, because then you can easily access our ePlans. I can find my mouse. Our ePlans website. This is how you get to the sign-in screen of ePlans. Our Learn More takes you to our ePlans webpage with all of our frequently asked questions, our how to uploads, our videos that we have available, how to print your permit, anything ePlans related, you would click on the Learn More. Apply for your permit, something I would imagine most of you guys are all familiar with. It's how you access our FIDO Online database. And then again, this red bar up here is clickable, and that takes you to the operational page for us. Again, I touched on it a few minutes ago, but FIDO, ProjectDox, we still have two softwares. We have our FIDO software that you guys are pretty familiar with. That is our permitting software. Then we have ePlans or ProjectDox. That is only a plan review software. ProjectDox, where you're going to check your plan status, where you're going to upload your plans, where you view your comments, and where you'll end up downloading your approved plans. FIDO, just where you're going to apply for the permits, where you'll end up paying your outstanding fee, and where you'll end up downloading your permit once approved. Big thing that comes into play, two separate logins. Just like to kind of throw that out there. Sometimes there's a confusion on that. It is two softwares. They talk some, but not entirely. As a user, keeping in mind that it's two different logins should help. Quickly want to go over the alternate process. That is essentially the process that was created because of COVID that looped us into moving into a fully electronic world much quicker than we anticipated doing. What we have done is essentially worked off of an existing workflow that we have in ProjectDox, and we replicated it in order to allow all permits to be submitted electronically. So that is what we term this alternate process, which our interims counter page gives you information for. A couple things to just kind of keep in mind. There is no fee for this alternate process. There does not need to be a contractor listed for the alternate process. It is strictly a plan review only permit number. We've had a lot of success in explaining it for those of you that were familiar with our W numbers or our R numbers, Q numbers that we used to assign plans to. It would be on the little sticker on the back of your plans. Essentially, think of this second permit number as replacing one of those plan numbers. That is the functionality for it. That is it. Quick other shot of if you successfully do this, it will say under type, it'll say residential e-plan or residential or commercial e-plan accordingly. Again, there will show a fee, but it will automatically show paid, and you will automatically see the upload an e-plan link available. You must click that. Once you click that, that begins the communication from our FIDO system to our ProjectDox system. Once you click this link, it will go away. So if you still see the link, you have not clicked it. One of those things to kind of keep in mind as you go through some of this. The ePlans workflow. One thing that we've, I think, struggled with is we've had a lot of processes in place for the paper world that have had to shift because of us going electronically. One big shift is the fact that all of our reviews happen concurrently now versus sequentially as they did in the paper world. Most of you would be familiar with the fact that you would come in, you would apply for your permit, then you would go to site for approval before you would move to zoning. Once you had zoning approval, then you would go to building. Once you had building, then you would log out. Right now, with the way ProjectDox is set up, is it goes to all of those departments at the same time. Everybody looks at it together, makes their comments, then it moves through the workflow before it's sent back to you. So previously, where you would address one comment at a time from a department, that is no longer an option. You have to wait for everybody to be finished, then you get the complete set of comments, then you address them all completely and return them. This wheel kind of outlines that. The 3 black squares here are the only 3 times that the task is with the applicant. Everything else is a Fairfax County task. Okay, so you guys start the workflow when you click that upload an ePlan button from our FIDO website. That's what starts this wheel. Then it goes to pre-screen. Pre-screen is when we review for all the minimum submissions that are part of that invitation email that you receive. If that's successful, it moves to a signer. If it's not, it goes through pre-screen corrections, and that's when it'll be sent back to you guys to make some corrections as necessary, and it can kind of go through this wheel until that's accurate. From a signer, it goes to in review. Again, those reviews all concurrent: site, zoning, building, health, town of Vienna, electrical, plumbing, all of them get it at the same time. They review it per that discipline's workload. Then it moves to review complete. That's essentially a QC step. Make sure that for those of us that are familiar with it, building puts a comment in, lacks site and zoning approval. Perhaps they saw it before site and zoning did. This is when we catch that. And if that's the only building comment, we will send it back to building before it goes back to you guys for them to update their comment accordingly now that site and zoning has approved it. Okay. If there are comments that need to be addressed, we'll send it back. Again, it goes through this kind of mini pre-screen, if you will, the applicant resubmit task. When you resubmit plans, you need to have the pages versioned correctly. So essentially it lays on top of the old page. You need to reply to all of the comments in the checklist and change mark. In our ePlans website, we have a link that shows exactly where those applicant response sections are. Goes through this however many times it needs to, then again, it moves to the necessary review departments all at the same time. That QC step happens, whether it's approved, whether it's failed, every time. And then if it is approved, it goes to batch stamp, and that's the log out task for those of us that are familiar with that from the paper world. Again, addressing some of the kind of more pointed questions that we received, naming convention, that tends to be a big reason why plans are not going through the pre-screen on the first try. So wanted to pull it out. This is available on our ePlans file upload webpage that we have. It is also in the email for the invitation that is sent out when you start a new project in ProjectDox, but it goes over the requirements for the sheet names. Leading zeros are important, keeping it under 50 characters. You know, if you can go shorter, great, but you do have to have a quick description and the page number, no symbols, and each sheet must be uploaded individually. Adding a user to ProjectDox. You have the opportunity to add a user only when you have the tasks. So again, based on that wheel, that only happens 3 times typically in the life of the permit. But you have an opportunity to add them. In ProjectDox, there's 2 types of applicants or 2 types of users. You can have an applicant, which is the same as the original applicant. They have all the same rights. They can take a task, they can complete a task, they can upload, download, all of that fun stuff. And then there's a contractor. Contractor can only view, upload, download. They cannot accept a task. So it's something that you guys just want to keep in mind as you're adding people. That's the name of them in ProjectDox, applicant, contractor. That does not mean that you cannot add an owner you would just need to decide whether or not you're going to have them follow the applicant path or the contractor path. And essentially that just comes down to rights. If you want them to be able to accept a task, add them as an applicant. If you do not want them to be able to take a task, add them as a contractor. Top reasons.
Nicole,
why we
can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Of course.
A question came in. People are trying to take notes so fast. Will this slide deck be something that I can send out to our members?
Yep.
Thank you. And we are recording. I see you remembered that. Thank you so much. All right. So we will share the recording and the slide deck. So those of you don't have to frantically write. Thank you, Nicole.
Absolutely. Yes. Sorry, I should have started with that. We will send this out. Top reasons why pre-screen or resubmit get sent back, right? So there's 2 times that you can kind of feel like you're in a wheel. One, that you must send the task to us. We do have a lot of first-time users that get caught up in this or don't recognize that maybe they forgot to hit the button. Step number 5, there's a button that you have to check, this upload task complete, and then you see a gray button that says upload and notify Fairfax County. If you do not do that, we are never notified that the permit is sitting out there. There's a similar one at resubmission. It has 3 check boxes, and then the gray button appears that says complete. We've had some users experience some issues with different browsers, whether it be Chrome or Foxit, or not Foxit, Firefox. Make sure you're expanding that task window that pops up entirely, and then you're scrolling all the way down to the bottom. It has become apparent that it is easy to miss. So I know for some that may seem silly to say, but certain browsers do make it a little more challenging than others to easily see that. We spoke briefly on it, the applicant response section of the checklist and change mark comments. So once you've gone through review the first round, perhaps you have failed that review, you need to make corrections. Previously, you would include a response letter or narrative explaining each fail comment. Now we ask that you reply per comment in the applicant response section. One trick to that is you must save twice. That is a system kind of quirk. You'll get a save button that pops up in green, and then at the very bottom left-hand corner, you must hit save again. But this is where you would reply to that. Files meeting the naming convention. So if you have to add new files, make sure that they still meet the naming convention. If you have to update an existing file, you need to make sure that you name it identically to the previous file, and identically to the point of, if you added 2 spaces, you need to make sure you add 2 spaces the second time. If you misspelled a word, you need to make sure you misspell the word the next time. So things like that are easy to forget, but it happens often. Building that I and that L, you'd be surprised how many people hit it differently on the keyboard. So you can't get it to version. Keep an eye out for that. Uploading a scaled plat. That has been a big issue we've had. The plat will show a scale, but the uploaded version is not to scale any longer. ProjectDox has a measure tool that's available to all applicants as well. When you upload it, you'll see measure in the upper portion of the window. You click on that, and if the plat says it's a 1 to 40 scale, you should be able to set the scale to 1 to 40. And if you measure it and it is different than what is shown on the plat, that is what we mean when we send it back saying it's not to scale. The most common reason we're seeing for that is when it's scanned in, some people change the margins to either fit a page size instead of actual. So just things to keep in mind. And the filing fee needing to be paid under the real permit. So when you're using the alternate process, because the fee is waived for the plan review, sometimes people forget to pay the real fee. Make sure, again, that that's taken care of. Those are all kind of the top reasons why we're seeing some of these be returned. ProjectDox plan status. There are a few reports that are accessible to anyone that has access to a project. So again, when you add a user, whether it be as an applicant or a contractor, they have access to these reports. These are all real time. If you feel like you cannot find your permit number, when you search under task PS, it's because the task may still be with the county. You only see your permit under the task PS button if the task is with you to do something with. If it's not, then you're going to want to click this button here to the right, projects. By default, it's going to default to recent projects. If you haven't touched it for a little while, you may want to hit all projects, and then you can search the permit number, or you can see all projects that you've been a part of. But that can be a common reason for not being able to find the permit number when looking. Up here, the project reports. That is where you will be able to access some of these reports. These that I have highlighted are what I would consider arguably some of the top reports that we have. Checklist, change mark. Again, that's how you view any outstanding comments that you have, whether it be from the pre-screen all the way through all the review departments to include zoning, site, building, health. And then the workflow routing slip report. That is a real-time status report. Your view is identical to my view. It is no different. It gives you the name of the reviewer, of the applicant. It tells you down to the second how long they've had it, or when they accepted it and when they completed it. It is 24-hour time, so it says 5 days. These consider weekends and holidays sometimes, and midnight through 6 a.m. We try to take off during that time. This is what that report looks like. Again, when you click on it, it tells you this time, the date assigned is the minute that communication started from FIDO, where you click the upload an ePlan button, to when the permit was created in ProjectDox, the date you accepted that task, the date you finished that task. You will always see your name here as the applicant or whomever else you gave access to be able to accept tasks. Again, if you add additional applicants, know that when you give somebody the right to accept tasks, if they accidentally take a task, it is still theirs. You cannot take it from a different applicant. So if you have a business partner, you both want to be in it. Joe grabs it, but Joe's gone on vacation for the week, but Joe had it and forgot about it. Bob can't come in and take it from Joe at that point. Joe has to sign back in and finish it. Obviously, that's an extreme situation, but just something to keep in mind. But you can always look at this report and see that in that case, Joe grabbed it and forgot to finish it. Again, our names will be visible, what group it's in, and how long and how many days down to the second from the time you look at that report. It shows you. Last slide here is about the logout process. When a project is completed and it reaches what we call the batch stamp task, you receive an email that talks about logout assignments. This is what that email looks like here. It lets you know that when you're ready, you need to email us, that all outstanding fees must be paid, a couple of forms. This email goes out for both residential and commercial side. So there are some stuff that won't be applicable to every residential project, but some things certainly will be. It is also on our interims counter page. Talks about how you need to obtain your approved permit and plans. We give information on both the e-paper and the e-plans process for that as well. One thing I would call out is, one thing I would call out is when residential plans hit batch stamp, if all of the outstanding conditions are already met, So all the fees have been paid. There's contractor listed if there appears to have been one. All your reviews are complete. Our technicians will go ahead and push that through batch stamp at that same time. So there may be times on residential that you do not have to email us. It happens automatically. You'll see it happen within a minute of receiving that batch stamp task. If it does not happen immediately, that means something wasn't done right. Whether there was maybe you only paid the filing fee and there was an additional permit fee, or there was a resubmission fee not paid, or wastewater review wasn't complete. Then we'll send it to batch stamp, and at that point you need to finish whatever the outstanding task is and then send us the email and we'll finish the batch stamp. Anyone have any comments on kind of those couple of slides before we go into some more information?
Oh, I see a hand raised. I don't know if you can see that. You do? Okay, sorry. I can only see a select few people, but over to the side I can see a little hand raised.
Looks like for Mark. Mark
Gill, is that Mark Gill?
Hey, Nicole, this is Mark Gill with Schroeder Design Build. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. We've had it's been a few months that we had some conversations over a project back in April, I think, trying to get some things through site, if I remember right. The question I have here is, how can my design techs know prior to the batch email that like there's an additional fee or there's some little thing outstanding that we need to do so that they don't have to email back in? And because it takes everybody's time, your guys' time and our guys' time to email back in and go, hey, it didn't send out the thing. Is there a place they can go to find that additional fees or additional outstanding items?
Yeah, so that's going to be FIDO. So once your plans have been all approved, that's where you'll then want to go to FIDO to look at any outstanding fees that may be due, or any admin holds is what they're called sometimes, where if we have to put a note in there to say something's missing, you'll see it then. Residentially, those tend to be the two only real holdups that we ever find. Commercially, sometimes it's cost breakdowns or asbestos forms that are required. But residentially, that tends to be the only ones.
And those are in FIDO, not in ProjectDox, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So I will go ahead and pass this off to Steve. We'll go over a few other things from the agenda.
Thanks, Betsy. Thanks, Nicole, for all that information. Hey, Mark, I don't know if you know how to do it, but your hand is still raised, and that way, if you end up needing to raise it later, we'll see it. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Nicole. That was fantastic. Moving on to Steve, and he's going to talk a little bit about some of your questions and concerns with the signatures and contractor IDs.
Yeah, I'm having some technical difficulties here. There we go. I'm going to start with the first off by saying thank you for giving us an opportunity to meet with you this afternoon to kind of go over some of this stuff. One of the issues that we kind of have is centered around electronic signatures. And we know that not all the residential plans that come in have electronic signatures because residential work can be done without it unless it's in a problem soil or, is a big structural interior remodel job with a lot of, new beams and footings and stuff inside. But if it does need to have a seal and signature, That is actually governed by DPOR. And we had some training from DPOR, I'd say about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, when things started to go electronic, so that we could get a better understanding of what the requirements are so that we were in compliance with state law. What you have on your screen, I kind of just took 2 screenshots really quickly, and it's from the Virginia Administrative Code, and it's the use of seal section for the Architects and Engineers Board. And the one that is the most important and relevant to this is item C, which is electronic seal signature. And basically what it says is you can use that, but it has to meet these 3 criteria. It has to be a unique identification of the professional. It has to be verifiable, and it has to be under the professional's direct control. So 1 and 2 were kind of easy for us to understand. Number 3 was what we really needed input from DPOR on. And when we met with them, basically what it came down to was you need to have the signature verifiable. And the way to do that, unfortunately, is through a proprietary software. So like a DocuSign or an Adobe or something to that effect that would allow us, when we download the sheet, to be able to see that it was actually signed. So when we're in ProjectDox and a plan is submitted and say it's got a structural set to it, maybe the architectural sheets aren't stamped, but there's a structural set to it. What we're looking for, let's see if I can get this to work. Hopefully it doesn't go too far. When we open up that sheet in Adobe, you'll see this little signature icon that I circled in green down here in the bottom. That is what we're looking for. We can click on that when we download the sheet, and we can make sure that the person that is the one who verified or signed this PDF is the same person that has their stamp on that sheet. One thing that we do not do is require this on every sheet. We ask that you guys have an index sheet with all of the pages listed on it. And as long as that sheet has this electronic signature that we can verify, the other sheets we don't check. When we get into a plan set that doesn't have an index sheet, it makes it a little bit more difficult for us. We're not going to hold you up if it's not on every sheet. We would prefer that you had an index and it was a little bit cleaner. But as long as it's on one sheet, we're going to let it go. The building official gave us the latitude to do that after a conversation that he had with DPOR. Index sheet is preferred method. That's what we want to see. But if you have 5 structural sheets or, 4 or 5 architectural sheets, as long as one of them has this electronic verifiable signature on it, we're going to go ahead and accept that and let it go. And I know that we've been in communication with a lot of other jurisdictions, and we all kind of handle and do this a little bit differently. So we understand that that's confusing, but we've tried to simplify it as best we can. Does anybody have any questions about that before I go on to contractor IDs? Okay. Fortunately, I don't have a slide for contractor IDs.
Steve,
Yes.
There's a hand up.
somebody has their hand up.
Okay, I couldn't see that. Sorry.
That's Lenny. I think with the handy mensch. Is that correct, Lenny?
It's interesting. I don't see everybody.
I did the participants list over to the side, and it lets me see when somebody puts their hand up. I'm not used to.
Yes, when you present though, you kind of lose that piece. Lenny, did you have a question? Is it maybe in the chat window?
That's a good question. I didn't see the chat window. This is a new system for me.
Yeah, so it's not in the chat window.
It took me a few minutes to figure out how to get myself off mute. Lenny, do you have a question?
I think you muted? Is he muted?
Another question by Mark. Mark, do you have a question?
Yes, I'm wondering if what the criteria is for requiring a stamp or electronic signature. Is it, if anything on this, our company is titled as architects and builders. Is the fact that we're called architects, is that what requires us to have a stamp on either the index or on each of the structural sheets?
So what we've been trained on by DPOR is that if a company submits a plan and part of their header claims that they are an architect, then it is required to be signed and sealed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This is Burger, can you mention? Hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
So my question, we do a lot of open the wall, bearing wall, 2 footers, remodel and a half. Typically, all are made with plans from structural engineer, which he has his stamp on. So that fall to the would need to have the stamp or to have viable and signature. It's kind of minimal of structural residential you need to have in order to make that's.
Were you able to hear the question completely?
I didn't get all of it. It was kind of broken up a little bit. I do want to answer it though. Do you see on the bottom where there's a conversation like chat box?
Okay.
If you could put it in there, I'll try to I'll answer the question.
And forgive me, Steve, I'm looking, I see the thing to turn on my camera, my microphone, the share, but I don't see a chat box. Can you give us a little further instruction?
So you see the camera, the microphone.
Uh-huh.
If you keep going over a little bit, you should see raise your hand.
Okay.
And then right to the next one there is the conversation box.
Okay, mine says participants. Let's see what else I've got there. Okay.
So you don't have the conversation box?
It should be between raise your hand and participants.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have it. Okay, never mind. Maybe everybody else does.
Is there something on the left bar that says chat? That could be the way I see it because
Right.
Angela, I just added you. I'm sorry. You were in as a guest for some reason. You should have it in just a second.
Oh, thank you. Forgive me. I just want to make sure that if anyone needs to use it, they know how to access it. Thank you.
Did Steve see my question about structural?
Yes, I did, Lenny. I did see your question. Technically speaking, if the way you read the DPOR regulations, and you can go to our sealed drawings handout, no residential work, unless it's in a problem soil, requires a seal.
Wait a second.
Unless Kyle can correct me on that, that's the way that chart is.
So as long as it's designed, hi guys, I'm for everybody who's familiar with Jack Smith, I'm the new Jack Smith. So as long as it is designed within the prescriptive code, the Virginia Residential Code, there's no seal required. Once you step outside of that, so once you start doing, say, where we normally see it would be like wall bracing or say trying to use products that aren't listed in the Virginia Residential Code, that's when we have to start getting into engineered designs or using engineering methods that would require a seal. But 90% of all permits we see don't necessarily require a seal on the project.
Okay, so if it's just a standard beam replacement or a couple of footers, you're not looking for that, even if the engineer says, yeah, my load calc show that we can go outside of the code a little bit. It's only when it's something more substantial.
Correct. Yeah. Technically, steel beams aren't in the residential code, but it's such a common engineering practice that we don't require a seal for a steel beam.
Okay.
It's most of the time in the walkthrough projects where we require an engineered design it's the wall bracing. It's when we try going outside of the prescriptive code for the wall bracing. And foundation repairs. Sorry, Steve.
Check real. Oh no, you're good. Thanks for stepping in because there's a common misconception that it's required on residential, and it's really for the most part not. So I'm glad we were able to address that.
It's great having all of you on one place.
The other thing, one of the other issues that we currently have, and it's a system limitation, I'm going to go ahead and dive into contractor IDs. As all of you should be familiar with doing work with us in Fairfax County, or the way our system is set up, your state license number is connected to an ID number, and that could be a 4 to 6 digit number in FIDO that allows you to submit online and tie your license to an application. We are working on a online tool that will allow you to punch in your contractor license number and find that ID number if you don't have it, but that's probably not going to be available until December or January. For the time being, if you don't have that number, you have to email or call us to get it. One of the issues that we have currently is that that tool that's going to come out in December and January isn't going to allow you to update that license. As you know, you guys have to update your license and renew it every 2 years. We used to have a tool or a download that we would get from DPOR every 30 days or so that would automatically update our system for us. DPOR changed systems about 3 years ago and took that download away from us. So we had to create a web service that every time a license needs to be renewed, we physically have to go in and put in the number, do a search, and then it will update FIDO. This is something that in the paper world was very easy. You didn't even know it was happening. The tech was doing it while you were sitting at their desk. In the electronic world, unfortunately, it's a little bit harder because you don't see that it's not been updated. And then you're going to get an error message from FIDO when you go to submit something if you've gone past that date and your license hasn't been updated yet. So what we're going to ask you guys to do is, if you get that stoppage when you enter your contractor ID number, go ahead just to get the application in and click same as owner. And then when you get into ProjectDox, you can upload a copy of your license into the documents folder. We'll see it, and we'll update and add your license to that permit before it gets issued. That way you're not stopping your process and sending us an email or calling us and waiting for us to do it. You can go ahead and keep your project moving forward, and we'll catch it on the back end before the permit gets issued. Does anybody have any questions about the contractor ID? Just so you know, when we get to Plus, and I'm going to talk about Plus a little bit later, when we get to Plus, you won't have that contractor ID anymore. It'll be a much more seamless process for you guys to be able to log in and tie your license to an application. So. I do see one question. It says, where did Jack Smith go? Jack Smith is nearing retirement, and the building division went ahead and kind of moved him over to do plan reviews and put Kyle in charge of that department. Kyle can probably explain a little bit better than I, but it was kind of a changing of the guard thing, and they wanted to do it while Jack was still here so that Jack could help coach and mentor Kyle and get him off and running before Jack left and there was no one there to do it. So
True succession planning as it's supposed to be.
Yes, it was probably a little bit earlier than anticipated, but as we switched to the electronic plans and everything, it just kind of it fit a little bit better. But Jack is still around for a little bit longer, and I still tap on his shoulder weekly, so he's still here. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, I think my contact information should be in an email. I try to respond quickly. If not, keep bugging me. I'll get there. Steve, did you have more?
Nope, I'm passing it back to you and Betsy.
Okay.
There's a raised hand.
Steve Larson.
Yes, folks. Hi, Steve Larson here. Just got off the phone with Jack Smith, actually, about a plan review. Question came up. I can see his comments. We were rejected for two very minor things. I can see his comments in the FIDO system, but I can't find them in ProjectDox. Is that common?
It shouldn't be. Did he? No, that wouldn't explain that.
So
What
it's
type of permit?
A one-story addition, residential.
So we'll be sending out the slides that I went over a little earlier in the presentation. It'll give you where to look at the checklist and change mark comments, but they are available in ProjectDox if it was submitted via ProjectDox.
It was, and I can't seem to locate that. I'll have to keep looking, I guess.
Yeah.
So he wasn't sure where they were. Am I understanding that correctly?
What's the permit number?
The permit number is 202-380-256. I mean, I can address them and re-upload the files. It's not a
In an effort of time, we'll take a look at that kind of after. That is not something we're going to dive into on the call right now. So if we want to continue with the presentation, Kyle, I think you're up.
I'm up.
Well, we're up together, Kyle. Just a little bit to talk about communication with staff. One of the things brought forward, and then even sort of a follow-up question that we got just this afternoon, was kind of talking about making direct contact with both the permit techs and the building plan reviewers. And so I'll kind of kick it off because it's a little bit different with the permit techs than it is with the plan reviewers. So there's probably two strong reasons why we currently are discouraging or precluding you guys from having direct contact with the permit techs on a regular basis. The first and foremost reason is that the way the pre-screens work, and the pre-screens are in the process in the circle that you saw from Nicole, the pre-screens are the step in the process that happens when you first submit, and we're looking to make sure that that plats are to scale, that the drawings are named properly, that they're in the right folder, to hopefully reduce the number of reviews that it takes to actually get the project approved, because pre-screens happen in a couple of days, reviews can take a couple of weeks, and so we'd much rather you get as much cleaned up in the, as much administrative portion of the permit application cleaned up in the pre-screen. The way our techs process those is what's called first in group. And so, I have 7 techs, I think is the number, and it moves a little bit depending on duties and jobs, and looking at 100 or so pre-screens a day. So when you think about the production that we're looking to get from them, it makes the most sense to take the one that has been in waiting the longest and process it. And that's what first in group means, is when I log in the morning, I go to this list and I look at the one that has the very oldest date and I take it. And if there are 6 of us, if I took one at 7:59 and Mary saw one at 8:01, she would take that one once I'd taken the one at 7:59. So if I review it first and you address all my concerns, Mary might get it next time just because of how it comes up in the queue. And so to have each of you reaching out to multiple people on multiple times seems very inefficient. The comments should be, especially during the pre-screen portion of it, very consistent. There's only a few issues that seem to come up over and over again. Like we said, it's naming conventions, it's the plats to scale, it's the documents uploaded into the right folders. So we felt that it was best, since it was first in group, to keep it going to one location, and that's the LDS building permits email box, which right now is a little bit backlogged, but in general, we have had it in about the 2-day time frame. So we get consistency as best we can. We get the ability for you to get your question answered, not necessarily by a person who's not going to be the one looking at it. The second piece to that, and this answers to both of those subjects, is production. Because the workload, believe it or not, on my staff has gone up by going digital. One would think it's gone down, but a lot of the coordination that you all did in the office when you walked it to zoning or you walked it to building, or you coordinated with the health department, is now on the permit techs. They have to check all that. They have to confirm who's done what. And so that, in addition, right now, and Steve's going to talk in a little bit about the November improvements, in addition, they're processing 2 permits every time they used to only process 1. So workload is up. And so in an effort to keep production moving, which is what you really want, we found so far that it is best not to have individual people being contacted. It creates duplication. You know, you call Wendy and you call Mandy and you call Josh because neither of them answered you quickly enough. And then all 3 of them are working on that at the same time. So for the time being, LDS building permits is the place to get your technical questions answered. We process those similarly in the order they're received. Steve assigns out 30 or 40 or 60 emails a day to staff to answer. If you have questions that are fairly simple and are more process related or status related, you can call 222-0801 #2, and somebody will answer the phone. Some of the people answering the phones, and this is going to get more consistent as well in some of the hiring I'm being allowed to do once they're trained. These folks can look in FIDO, they can look in ProjectDox. They can send you to the website with clear instructions on where to find what you need by yourself, so you don't have to call the next time. We have virtual appointments. If that doesn't work and you think you really need somebody to help that can share screens like we're doing here and walk you through the very specifics of your permit, we do those one every hour from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day. And again, that's with our more experienced customer service representatives. It's some of the administrative assistants who've been on the phones and doing some of this and working with our permit techs. They have Skype access to some of the permit techs when they're in these meetings. So if there's a more simple technical question, they can get it answered while you're on the phone. So for now, that's why we are not opening the gate to emailing and calling individual permit techs. as we get workload leveled, as we get people trained, as we get staffing done, we kind of reevaluate that on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. It's not something that's been completely eliminated, but I would not expect any real changes in terms of direct contact with permit techs anytime before the first of the year. And then again, it depends on where we are and what we see.
For the building reviewers, it's a little bit different. When all this first happened, of course, everybody was scrambling to get their offices together at home. And up until recently, my reviewers did not have county cell phones. So they were trying to use their old desk numbers to communicate and email. And we just found out that one of the programs that we were waiting on is taking a little bit longer than expected. So everybody's going to be getting county cell phones. So hopefully communication should be up a little bit shortly. And all that stuff will be posted online, their contact information.
So Lenny Berger from Haney Bench again. So as somebody who, 99% of our work was walk in, walk out type permitting, what I think the most frustrating part of this is not being able to get a hold of somebody to resolve a problem or find out if the ball has dropped between departments. Whereas like with Arlington, they were a little further along on their online process. And when we submit a permit, we know who in each department is reviewing it. And in general, if they say, hey, we need you to provide more information, or this isn't going to pass review, you can email them, you can get a hold of them so that we can get it answered and get it resolved. I think that's been the most frustrating thing, is that you just feel like you're in the middle in nothing, and then now things drag on for weeks and weeks at a time while you're trying to resolve whatever issues you guys have.
Absolutely. That was one of that's one of the biggest things we've seen on our end too, as far as, before, if it was something small and you were sitting directly across from the reviewer, you could fix it right there and we move on. We are working on developing a process right now for something similar to that. The reviewer will contact you, let you know what they have an issue with. And if it's small enough, we'll come up with something how we can take care of it.
Yeah, what I found is that when you actually get a hold of somebody, they will jump through hooping flames to help you out. It's getting to somebody that can help figure out, like, okay, here's why it's stuck and here's how I can help you unstick it, type of a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as our process develops further and we start to understand, our roles within it, we will be able to increase our influence and be able to help. And I think that's the same way for everybody. I mean, you guys are learning the new process, we're learning the new process, and we're all starting to get more comfortable. And times will start to reduce, lines of communication will continue to open, and everything will get better. Obviously, in the March, April, May timeframe, it was not very fun for anybody.
Yeah, but we've been guilty of the uploading the scale problem to zoning, and then all of a sudden, now it sits another week, and then I can't answer the comments that plan review had, and now my customer is looking at me like I'm an idiot. So it's hard to set expectations, which is why we have such a high level of frustration as we're trying to meet our customers' needs.
Absolutely.
And I will, that was kind of one of the follow-up questions that I think somebody had asked today. We hear you. Remember that you used to do all that. And again, for the same day permits, which will never exist again, I think we all recognize that We are reaching out to some of our sister jurisdictions to understand how they're doing it in a day or two. But I don't think anybody believes we'll ever get back to same day. We recognize that it used to be that it was in parallel. You had to get building approval before you could get zoning approval, and then before, site had to go before zoning, and it was one after the other. Now it goes to everybody at the same time. So it still is in your path. The longest review is what measures the time frame, because you cannot resubmit. I think Nicole hit on that, until you have the task back, and you can't get the task back until every agency that has been assigned a review has completed their review. Part of the reason for that is to avoid the address zoning, but buildings looking at an earlier version. And now we don't know if the version that building reviewed was the one that zoning approved or the one that zoning saw later. And then we have to go back and figure out which version everybody looked at, which is why everybody has to complete their review. You can certainly work with the building reviewers, work with the zoning reviewers, however they're willing and able to get to the point where everybody is satisfied, so that when you are able to resubmit into ProjectDox, it'll hopefully go through the process more smoothly. The other factor to times is just like Kyle mentioned, we're still learning. When we went remote in March, PAC had 3 people who knew how to work in ProjectDox, because that was 10% of our work at most. Now it is 100% or 90% of our work. And so I've had to train everybody on my side as well. And so in that training process, things are a little bit less efficient, a little bit slower, but we are getting better every day, and hope that we are finding ways to eliminate some of your frustrations. But we still can't measure for you what those turnaround times can be, because it depends on volume. It depends on how well, some of the worst cases we've had have gone through 6 or 7 pre-screens because they couldn't get the plat scale right. They ignored the comments related to naming conventions and just kept re-uploading the same drawings. And some of that I recognize was frustration, because they couldn't reach anybody to discuss what was wrong. But that's where you ask for an appointment with one of our customer service reps, and they'll if they can't answer it, they'll get you the answer. But to keep uploading the same drawings is only going to delay it. When reviews go through 2 or 3 or 4 reviews, even if they're 2 or 3 days, when you're at your 4th review, 2 weeks to the process. So it's important that we work together to get good plans. It's important that we work together to ensure that when we are making comments, if you don't understand them, reach out to the LDS permits mailbox. Even though you might wait a day or 2, that's better than 2 or 3 more reviews. And we'll continue to grow and learn in how we can best communicate through that, and how we can start to get you reliable timeframes to pass along to your customers. I know that's not what you wanted to hear, but.
We have a hand up.
Okay.
Hi, this is Trish Schroeder Design Build. I just want to let you know, just for your planning purposes, and I would think the majority of people on this call would agree, and NARI is such a great resource for you to know what's going on in the economy and when things are slowing up and when they're starting to increase. And right now, I believe that our backlog of most of these people on this call in the design process is huge. So I would see that in the next month, you're going to be seeing more of an increase of permits being submitted for the next 2 months, because we're very fortunate that the consumer now has decided that they're going to spend some money. And so just wanting to let you know that that's where, feet on the ground, ear on the ground, that's where we are. So when you're planning of staff, I would be prepared that more permits are going to be coming in.
Thank you. as we always say, great for the economy, not so great for my staff.
Right, I didn't know, do you anticipate adding more staff if you know this is coming up? Or what would it be that, or is there a freeze on hiring at the county?
So we don't really have the flexibility to hire and let go as workload increases and decreases. But on the flip side of that, PAC has been understaffed probably for about 18 months. Steve would probably argue for about 18 years. But we are in the process of filling at least three more positions, I should say, over the next, 3 more technical positions over the next 6 months or so. But with that comes time to train. So unfortunately, it has been a challenge for us to be as responsive to industry needs as we'd like to be. This is an entry-level position into the county. We see a lot of movement, and what they do requires a significant amount of training. So all of those factors have added to our challenge to serve you best for a while. We continue to try and find ways to overcome that. So in answer to your question, there is a hiring chill, not a hiring freeze, because the board recognizes how understaffed we've been and how important it is for us to continue to serve our customers. We have not really been impacted by that hiring chill, but it just takes time.
This is Helmut Castro and Fairfax County, and I think Betsy said well. Trish, we do keep our ear to the ground with economic leading indicators to see where things are going. Commercial right now is down, big commercial. Residential is up, so there is a swing. So those are things that we really watch closely. We have a heavy focus on technology right now. We're talking about, I've been listening to the conversation. We're talking about, virtual appointments. I mean, Betsy and I just today, we sat through a demo that our DIT office at IT Technology in the counties that about to deploy this new way of scheduling appointments that is going to be really helpful. Steve talked about the 10 project types that are going to be rolled out in November. All these things are gonna help us a lot. And believe me, when Elena, you talked about this, we now, I was a consultant for many years, and I know what it means to have someone to talk to at the county for help. So we totally understand that aspect, and we will endeavor to do better. I mean, we believe me, we wake up every day, all of us here at the county, trying to figure out how to do things better. The volume is heavy, and thanks. And we really want to help you out. This has been a great meeting. I think it's been a lot of good information exchange, and I would like for us to keep, to keep having this dialogue. I'm the director of operations for LDS, and we really want to help as much as we can. Keep bringing issues to us. You have our contact information. Please feel free to contact any of us at any time, if you're in trouble, and we'll do the best we can to help you out. And believe me, we know that time is money. We truly understand it, and we're doing the best we can to help out.
Yeah, I would hope the county would understand that every project we don't get done doesn't count towards our BPOL license tax. We're not paying sales tax on things, so there's a fair amount of money that the county's not taking advantage of.
Yeah, understood. Yeah.
So I'm going to attempt to show a slide again and see if this works out better than the first time. So As you guys know, back in March, Nicole touched on it. We had 2 days to come up with a way to go all electronic, build it out, test it, and train staff and get it out to the public. And it's not the best. We knew it wasn't the best, but we did what we had to do in the moment so that we could protect not only our staff, but, you know, all the constituents in Fairfax County. So what that left us with at that time was 3 standard types, what we call standard types. We had new commercial building and interior alterations commercial, which have been in production and in use for over 3 years and been highly successful. 2 weeks prior to closing the doors, we launched the new single family. It really never had any time to get traction. I'm not really quite sure any actually even came in for review during that 2 weeks before we had to shut down, close the doors, and send everybody home. So what we had to do in the interim was to create the plan review only permits, one for commercial and one for residential. And it did create some confusion. We understand that. We knew that what we were doing was going to not be an easy thing. We were going to have growing pains. It was going to be difficult for everyone to understand that you're not just applying for one permit anymore. You're now applying for 2, even though you're only paying for 1. So all along, while we were doing that and trying to, you know, get people familiar with ProjectDox and the new process that we had to put in place, we've been in the background working on what we call phase 2. And phase 2 is going to launch sometime in November. And what it's going to look like, see if this works, is we are going to add 10 new types to ProjectDox. And those types that I have here are residential addition, interior alterations, new townhouse, residential pool, commercial pool, demo, retaining wall, and then the 3 commercial trades. And when we launch this in November, we are going to come back to you guys and give you guys a training on what that's going to look like to be more specific. But the biggest thing to walk away with today and understand if it will actually work, it's not working right now, is that these ePlan only permit types are going to go away. You will no longer have to apply for 2 permits. And looking at this list, some of the questions that you probably have running through your head right now is, where's the deck permit and where's the basement permit? Well, those permit types are being expired. There will be instructions and training that we can give to you guys on what to apply for, but to give you an example, residential addition is now going to be for any type of project that you're doing that you're adding square footage to a residential property. So if you're adding a deck or a screen porch or a sunroom, you're now going to apply for a residential addition. If you're doing a finished basement or anything to the interior of the house, you're going to apply for an interior alterations residential. And you will only be applying for 1 permit. You will no longer be applying for a second permit. What we did is we went back and we said, which permit types make the most sense and also tie in from this update that we're going to launch in November that will also tie into Plus when we launch that in about a little over 2 years. So what we're doing is in Plus, and you guys wouldn't have known this yet, the decks and the basements and all those extra permit types like an area away or a foundation repair, we're going to go away anyway. So what we're doing is we're taking an opportunity to go ahead and get rid of those permit types now so that industry can start to getting used to not applying for those anymore. So that when we roll into Plus, when you apply for a residential addition in FIDO and ProjectDox, when you go into Plus, you're also still going to apply for a residential addition. So we're trying to fix what we have going on now while also looking to see what we're planning to do in the future. So coming in November, and there'll be more on this, and I think we're going to work with Angela to get back on your schedule. We're going to do some training. We're going to offer some training out there for the public, for, you know, homeowners and contractors, anybody that wants to sign into it, so that we can go through and show you guys what we built and what we launched before we launch it. So tail end of October, first couple weeks of November, you're going to see some, I think we're going to do it through Letter to Industry. So if you guys haven't signed up for Letters to Industry, I would recommend that you do that. We can send you out the links to do that. And I would also at the same time recommend that you sign up for the building official blog post. But we're going to put out invitations so that you guys can sign up, get into some of these trainings. We're also going to do another presentation for y'all sometime, hopefully mid-October, so that you get a preview of what's coming. It's not going to be like we did in March, where we just had to throw this out there and we all had to figure it out. We're going to have some time built in to where we can train you and provide assistance before this launches in November.
That is
now
very
the animation works.
by the way, very helpful, and we appreciate it.
And
is there anything else on that, Steve, that you want to touch on?
not at the moment.
Okay.
If there's any questions about it, I can take questions about it. One thing that you're not going to see on this slide, these are what is here. These 13 workflows will be stuff that has plan review associated with them. So obviously you don't see residential trades there. You know, so because there's not going to be a workflow in ProjectDox, it doesn't mean you can't apply for a residential trade. It's just not going to be, it doesn't have a plan review associated with it. So it's not getting a workflow built for it.
Does anyone have any questions for Steve on this? Kind of what's coming in November with the new permit types and ProjectDox? And then next on our agenda, and if you do have questions about that, you can ask them now. We wanted to just kind of open it up for general questions. If you've thought of things from any aspect of the presentation that you still have questions on, now is the time to ask those. You can raise your hand. You can share them in the chat.
So I just received a question in the chat about signing up for the Letters to Industry. There is a link that I believe was sent out in an email. Getting a nod, yes. Angela sent that out that provides you with the link to where to sign up for our notices and our Letters to Industries. That is how we will be communicating to industry. Some of you may have had maybe some generic emails in there. I would encourage everybody to please put in an email that is viewed and use that especially in the next coming months and maybe even up to the next couple of years as we're rolling out some of this new information. That is our most successful way to communicate with everyone, but it's only as successful as the email you provide us. So please, if you haven't, take the opportunity to do that.
And Nicole, I will just follow that by saying at the conclusion of this, in the next day or so, I'll get this recording from you guys. I'll get the slide deck from you guys, and I will include in a follow-up email to all of our members, even those that weren't able to join us today, a link to sign up for the Letters to the Industry. And then if I could also, I don't know if I have the one for building official blog posts. I can include both of those. And then again, we'll get that out to everyone. And then Mark, it looks like Mark has a hand up, and I'm not sure if which Mark it is. We've got a couple Marks and a couple Steves on here.
This is Angela's Mark with Schroeder.
Oh, that Mark, that one.
The troublemaker. That's all right. You're in. So one of the struggles that we've really had in the transition is that like permits have gone through very unevenly. Some departments have gone fast at times. Some departments have been really behind. The review times obviously went from short to really long, and they've slowed down and they've gone big again. So there's not a sense of like any predictability. And there's also a lot of times not a sense of like, is something stuck? Is something hung? Is there something we didn't do that we don't know? And then we try to reach into the county and say, hey, we need help. We just want to check. Did we make a mistake? Is it stuck somewhere? Did it get stuck in the system? In some departments we can find somebody and we can get an answer. In some departments we can't. And then we've spent our time and spent Nicole's time trying to get Kyle to answer the phone, right? Because Kyle's buried, and it just becomes a real time waste for everybody involved in it. Is there some way, like, there could be a point person or like a troubleshoot person or some way for us to reach in and say, hey, is everything okay? Right? Rather than, one permit we sat and called and find out that one of those buttons that Nicole was talking about, my designer didn't hit the button. And we waited 4 weeks to find out that we didn't hit the button and we couldn't get an answer. What didn't we do? Right? So is there a way to handle that, or like a way that like a point person or somebody that we could always reach out to as like a de facto and say, hey, help?
Unfortunately, at this time, I wish I could provide you with one contact to go to. It's not an option I have available right now. The best way, and I know it hasn't been as fast as we would like it to be, but to have the most people looking at an email in the order in which it came is to email us at that LDS building permits mailbox. That mailbox is monitored by permit techs only. So as far as status things that look funny or out of place, that is the best way to get to us. I will be quick to admit that my priority is that mailbox over even my own in a lot of ways. So I tend to be in that mailbox along with my texts as well to try to get those answered as quickly as we can. Our phone line, the 222-0801, is getting better each day. We had a lot of volunteered help from other departments that were very gracious, but unfortunately they didn't have the type of training to recognize kind of those kind of weird, like, is it stuck? What button didn't you press? We have worked really hard over the coming weeks, and as we've mentioned, are in the process of hiring more with that specific training so that resource becomes a better one for all of you. Things like the button showing you guys that workflow routing slip, that is a way to help identify those kind of things so that you could have someone in the staff that can be a little proactive with that issue, going over kind of those top reasons why. Our frequently asked questions page on our ePlan site has a lot of common issues that we've had arise. We do add to that frequently asked question on a semi-regular basis as things have come up. But as far as how to get information as quickly as you can, it's going to be that phone number, the 222-0801 option 2. And if waiting on the phone line for a little while is not an option, the LDS building permits with an S email address is kind of your next best option.
And
Nicole,
I'll add a couple of things to great options Nicole gave. One is that when you get with a customer service rep on the 222-0801, if you're feeling like you want a little more, ask them to schedule you a virtual appointment. Those are not being utilized as well as they could. And it's a great option to get with our more experienced customer service folks who are kind of the bridge between the folks answering the phone every day and the PAC techs. So that's another option that is there and very available right now. I mean, next day appointments are being scheduled regularly. The second piece is the website. I know I know that doesn't really answer the question, but sometimes if you troubleshoot or use your Google search or your to find, you might find an answer to something that you weren't 100% sure in. And lastly is ProjectDox. The issue, Mark, that you mentioned about learning about that submit button, if you go and look at that workflow routing slip, you will see exactly where the permit is and that it didn't get through. Or that if you look at it and it made it through pre-screen and it went to the reviewer assigned, but you don't see a zoning or you don't see a site, that'll be a clue to you ahead of the week or two that you were waiting in the past to let you know there's something that's not kosher. And when you get to those, that's where, you know, again, those virtual meetings, the 222-0801 phone number and the email will work great.
Nicole, is that did I hear you say that email was down to 2-day response time? I know at one point in time it was 4 to 5 days, but you said it was down to 2. Is that?
Not right now.
Yeah, so it was holiday weekend, couple vacations. So we are at I believe 4 days right now, but we're hoping through perhaps the end of this week, maybe early of next week, we will get that caught up once we have all of our staff back from holidays and we have the full working week again.
Do we have any sense, and I know this is like a loaded question that is going to end with it depends, but I mean, we got up to like 4 weeks to get the first zoning review and another 2 weeks to get the first building review, and all like anytime there was a response I had to go back, it was 2 to 4 weeks to get the response looked at again. And so we were averaging 8 to 10 weeks for permits for a while. Do we know where we're at currently? Are we like down to 2 to 3 weeks to get that first review? What do you guys see in the future?
So we don't have a great reporting system out of ProjectDox right now. We are currently in the process of trying to get that. And once we get those 10 new types out there, we'll be able to report even further. I can tell you about in July, we actually had decks down to 8 days in and out of the county. If your plat came in perfect, and whether it had a plan associated with it or if it was per county detail, it was coming out in 8 days. Obviously, that's still not a great number. Don't get me wrong. We want to be better than that, and I think we can be better than that. But then we went into the summer, and we started having vacations, and zoning lost a couple staff members, and we lost a couple staff members, and then we have DHCD required trainings that our staff have to go to. So I think decks are back up to around 2 weeks if it comes in and gets through pre-screen the first time. But I don't have any metrics available to me or a report available to me to be able to confirm that. But the goal is to get this thing down as low as we possibly can. So we understand the situation that you all are in. Trust me, you know, we're working evenings, Saturdays, Sundays. We're doing everything that we can to keep those times down. And we'll continue to work through that. For the remainder of this week, we have a couple more people still in training, but starting off next Monday, we have all of our staff back probably for the first time in the last 2 months. So we are going to really crack down and try to get our backlog down.
I really appreciate everybody's efforts. One of the things that happened to all of us on the call, and I'm a little bit of an outspoken guy on some of these issues. You know, we went through a sales lull, and then everybody sold a lot of work, and then we went through a permit lull, right? And so, you know, we skinnied staff, we cut down people's salaries, we cut down their workloads to go through COVID, and then we did it again over the summer and we're going through a tough time. So I'm trying to come on, but because we simply couldn't get things through permitting process. And I think in our minds, there's a new program coming out at the end of the year that we've got to relearn. There's a potential for another COVID drop. And we're all like, if we go back to 8 and 10 and 15 week permit times, that's just going to be a struggle, both for our employees, for our families, and for our clients. So I really appreciate everybody's effort and the hard work that's been put into it. We've been tried to be patient, and we have not been the most patient people, as Nicole knows, because we've had some struggles. But I do appreciate the efforts, and hopefully we can all move forward on a better path going forward, I hope. So.
Well, and I was going to say, we can't guarantee a time frame, but what I can say is we're now much better prepared for what comes next than we were for what came the first time. So, you know, we hopefully shouldn't see that kind of turnaround time. If we do, there's a lot of work out there that a lot more work than anybody anticipated.
We have more work and design than we have in the history of the company.
Oh, okay.
It's enormous.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And no materials, from what I hear. Murphy's Law, right? But seriously,
We totally, Mark, we totally understand that we're changing this again in November, but I can promise you it's a change for the better. Because right now, every permit you guys do, you got to do twice. Every permit that comes in, we have to issue twice. So right there's a time savings almost immediately when it comes to pre-screen and it comes to log out. And there'll be a little bit of growing pains there, but I do think at the end of the day, what we're rolling out in November will create efficiencies.
And added to that, you know, we appreciate the limited patience that you have shown. Mark, that was for your benefit. And we appreciate your continued, as we can, every day we recognize that it is not where any of us want to be, and we're working every day to get better. So the more you help us, the more quickly we can get there. And you know, one of the things that we had noticed at the beginning that's gotten a lot better is that because of some of the lack of communication, you all were emailing that LDS mailbox and not getting an answer the next day. So you were emailing again the next day. And then when that answer didn't come, you emailed the third day and decided to try another 4 email boxes. And so what that does is it has 5 different people working on the same thing. Do have a little patience and trust in the system as much as you can. It might not be fast enough, but we think it's headed the right way.
And I do just want to jump on for just one quick second too, Mark, just for something that you mentioned with the kind of thought of this new process coming out in November. I do want to assure everybody that it is still the same systems right now that we're talking about. So everything that we're talking about right now is not being changed as far as relearning something all new. We've taken a lot of the feedback we've gotten over this kind of thrown together process, for lack of a better way of putting it, to try to help with some of the inefficiencies of it. But you still be dealing with ProjectDox, you still be dealing with FIDO in a way. We're just taking some of those more cumbersome steps, like the 2 permit types, and figuring out which one to track, which one to call in for inspections, which one to pay fees under. We're removing that obstacle. But as far as the lessons that we've all gone through and the learning curves that we've all gone through of like some of the naming conventions and the file sheets and how to respond to comments, what we've learned is not for nothing, because that will continue through with this software. And we're hoping there won't be much new learning other than figuring out kind of these new permit types, but we have a lot of plans to make sure that is very seamless, that is very communicated, and that all of you guys are involved in that process along the way via that letter to industry announcements that we're going to send out.
Thank you, Nicole. I just want to ask one favor, if I could. I keep saying that I'm going to send out a follow-up. We have less people registered for this than we had show up. So many of you I may not have an email for. I think Debbie has put in the chat because I'm still as a guest and didn't sign in correctly, clearly. So if you haven't already done so, if you could send me your email either in the chat where Debbie is capturing those, or you could send an email to executive@NARIMetroDC.org, and I'll make a follow up with you. And we're getting close to 5, and I want to respect everyone's time. First of all, I just want to thank everyone for your time to be on this. I especially want to thank the team from Fairfax County We realize that you guys have really just, you have reacted and tried to get a system that works, and you've had to do so in record time. And we all have just had to change our systems and processes throughout this. So it has been crazy. I look forward to continuing to partner with you guys. We will connect on getting this information and then getting information out to our members for the end of October, early November training on the new Plus or the new system, whatever we're calling that. And thank you all for doing what you do. You all care, and we really appreciate that among our members and the county. So is there any final things that we need to touch on? Betsy, your team, any other things?
I think we're good. Thank you all for your interest and help and support in moving forward. We look forward. We will try and schedule something similar to this for this group with the 10 new types that Steve had mentioned sometime in early November, just to get this group and their particular interests in that new system rather than the broader training we're giving to everybody else. We'll give you all something that maybe focuses more on the 3 or 4 types of permits that will mostly impact you all.
Thank you. We appreciate that. And if there is anything that our members and NARI can do to better assist you and your team over at Fairfax, please know that we want to be a resource. We have, our education day coming up. If there's anything in there that would benefit your team, please let us know. We'd love to have you as our guest. And I'll just circle back with the planning team for this to follow up for the recording and everything. You guys are great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, it's literally 3 minutes till 5 o'clock here. Have a great afternoon. Get some dinner, a drink, whatever you need.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Great job, team. Thank you. Nicole and Betsy, thank you so much.
Of course, thank you.
Thank you too, folks. I appreciate it very much.
Appreciate you guys putting this on for us. It was great. I will send you out an email later tonight with the slideshow, and then anything else you need from us, please don't hesitate to let me know.
Fantastic. Thank you.